in the heart of a bustling train terminal, where hurried footsteps and echoing calls blend into a symphony of daily life, a vigilant police canine named Max catches a faint, desperate signal from a young girl lost in the crowd. Her subtle gestures, invisible to most, speak volumes to his keen senses. As Max tugs his partner toward the truth, a web of deception unravels, exposing a sinister scheme that preys on the innocent. What begins as a simple patrol spirals into a gripping pursuit of justice, where one animal's unwavering intuition becomes the key to freedom for those silenced by fear. Prepare for a tale of bravery and unbreakable bonds that will tug at your heartstrings, because sometimes the greatest heroes don't speak. They listen with their souls. If this resonates, like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. And tell me in the comments, what's the most heroic act you've witnessed from an animal? The Grand Central Terminal never truly slept. Even at mid-morning, rivers of people surged across polished marble, rolling suitcases rattling like distant thunder, overhead speakers calling out departures in calm, robotic voices. Amid the organized chaos walked Officer Jake Harlan and his partner Max, a 6-year-old German shepherd whose black and tan coat caught the light like polished armor. They had been together since Max was an eager 16-month-old bundle of energy, and in those years they had learned to read each other better than most humans ever manage. A flick of an ear, a slight shift in weight, the tiniest change in breathing, each was a sentence in a language only the two of them spoke fluently. Jake greeted familiar security guards with a nod, smiled at children who wanted to pet the police puppy, and kept scanning. That was the job. See everything, trust nothing, expect anything. Max moved at perfect heel, head high, nose working the air in steady sweeps. To the commuters, he was a comforting symbol. To Jake, he was the sharpest tool in the arsenal. Then, without warning, Max froze mid-step. His ears snapped forward, body rigid, eyes locked on something across the crowded concourse. Jake felt the leash go taut like a bowstring. "Easy, boy, what do you see?" Max didn't blink. His stare cut through the moving bodies to a woman in a bright red jacket, pulling 3 children toward Platform 9. The older 2 kept pace, but the smallest girl, no more than 7, dragged her feet. Her free hand kept brushing the woman's hip in a deliberate rhythm. 4 quick presses, pause, 4 more, over and over. A pattern. Jake had seen that pattern once before in a training video about child abduction victims using covert signals. His pulse quickened. Max let out a low, almost inaudible rumble, not aggression, but absolute certainty. The woman sensed the attention. She glanced back, offered a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Everything okay, officer?" "Your dog looks upset." Jake kept his tone light. "He's just doing his rounds. Ma'am, long trip ahead?" "Visiting relatives," she answered too quickly, tightening her grip on the girl's wrist. The child winced. Max took one deliberate step forward, then another, pulling against the leash with quiet insistence. Travelers began to slow, forming a loose circle of curiosity. Phones rose. Jake raised a calming hand to the crowd while his mind raced. Max had never been wrong, not once in 6 years. The girl's eyes met Max's across the distance. In that fleeting second, something passed between them: fear, hope, recognition. Max answered with a soft, encouraging whine that only Jake could hear. The girl's lips trembled. She pressed the pattern again, harder this time, as if pleading. Jake made the call. "Ma'am, "Could you step over here for a moment? Routine check." The woman's smile wavered. "We'll miss our train." "It'll only take a minute." Jake's voice stayed polite, but his stance shifted into quiet authority. Max planted his paws, refusing to yield even an inch. His amber eyes never left the child. The terminal noise seemed to fade, leaving only the sound of Jake's heartbeat and Max's steady breathing. Whatever was about to happen, the line had already been drawn by a dog who understood danger long before any human did. The alcove near Gate 12 offered a pocket of relative quiet. Still, the weight of dozens of stairs pressed in from the main hall. Jake positioned himself between the family and the exit while Max sat alert, a living shield beside the little girl. "Names?" Jake asked, pen poised over his notebook. The woman forced brightness into her voice. "I'm Claire Bennett. These are my children, Noah, Mia, and little Sarah." Sarah. The name didn't match the fear in the girl's eyes. Max scooted closer until his shoulder brushed Sarah's leg. She flinched at first, then relaxed when she realized the big shepherd meant no harm. Jake crouched to the child's level. "Hi, Sarah. I'm Jake. This is Max. He likes kids." Sarah's gaze flicked to the woman, then back to Max, who tilted his head in gentle invitation. Slowly, so slowly, Sarah reached out and rested trembling fingers on Max's head. The dog held perfectly still, letting her feel the warmth beneath the vest. The woman, Claire, or whatever her name was, shifted her weight. "She's just tired, long morning." Jake stood. "Mind if I see some ID and I'll need to glance in the bag?" Standard procedure when my partner alerts. Claire's knuckles went white on the strap. "You're holding us up for no reason," Max answered with a single sharp bark that rang off the high ceiling. The sound made Claire jump. Sarah did not. Instead, her shoulders dropped in visible relief. Jake held out his hand. After a long second, Claire relinquished the tote. Max's nose hovered inches away as Jake unzipped it. Clothes, snacks, coloring books, normal. Then his fingers closed around something hard wrapped in a sweater. He pulled out a stack of passports, 5 of them, all with Claire's photo, but different names, different birth years. Next came a cheap burner phone sealed in tape, and, worst of all, a thick envelope of photographs. Dozens of children, some candid, some clearly taken without consent. Claire's mask shattered. "Those are personal," Sarah's whisper cut through the air. "She told us we were going to a better place. But the others never came back." The words landed like stones in still water. Jake felt the ripples in his chest. Max moved instinctively, placing his body fully between Sarah and the woman. A low, steady growl vibrated in his throat, not loud but unbreakable. Backup arrived within moments. As officers took Claire into custody, she began to cry. Not the tears of innocence, but the tears of someone whose lies had finally run out of room. Sarah clung to Max's vest, burying her face in his neck. Jake radioed it in, voice calm despite the storm inside. "We've got a possible 207 ring. Multiple juvenile victims. Need detectives and CPS now." While they waited, Max lay down and let Sarah lean against him, her small hand never leaving his fur. Every few seconds the dog turned his head to lick her fingers, a silent promise. "You're safe now." The enormity settled over Jake like winter air. One hidden signal, one dog who refused to ignore it, and an entire nightmare was cracking open. He looked down at his partner, eyes shining. "Good boy," he whispered. Max's tail thumped once against the floor, as if to say, "We're just getting started." By early evening, the terminal had become a command post. Yellow tape cordoned areas, detectives clustered around laptops, and the air smelled of burnt coffee and urgency. A senior investigator flipped through freshly printed files. Woman's real name is Elena Hart, wanted in 4 states for trafficking minors. The burner phone had one outgoing text scheduled tonight, coordinates to an industrial lot outside the city. "They're moving the rest of the kids at midnight." Jake absorbed the information without blinking. How many kids? At least 4 confirmed. Maybe more. Max sat beside him, ears swiveling at every voice, reading the room the way only he could. When Jake scratched behind those ears, the dog leaned in, grounding him. Sarah had already been reunited with a crisis counselor, but refused to let go of the small canine badge Jake had clipped to her jacket for luck. Every time someone mentioned Max, her face lit up like sunrise. Jake looked at the clock. 4 hours until the rendezvous. "We're not waiting for midnight." The convoy rolled out under a bruised purple sky, unmarked SUVs and K9 units moving in silent formation. Jake rode in the lead vehicle. Max stretched across the back seat, nose pressed to the cracked window, tasting the night. They reached the abandoned storage yard just after 11 p.m. Chain-link fences sagged under years of neglect. Weeds pushed through cracked concrete. The only light came from a single bulb over a corrugated roll-up door. Jake clipped on Max's tracking lead. "Find them, Max. Bring them home." The shepherd dropped his nose and moved like liquid shadow between rusted containers, ignoring rats and broken glass, guided by something deeper than scent alone, almost like sorrow given direction. 20 yards in, he froze, raised his head, and gave one sharp, excited bark. Officers breached the door. Inside, 4 children sat tied loosely together on dirty mattresses, eyes huge in the sudden flashlight beams. The oldest couldn't have been more than 10. When they saw Max, fear turned to wonder. One little boy whispered, "Is the doggy here to save us?" Max approached slowly, tail low, and licked the boy's outstretched hand. That single gesture broke the spell. Quiet sobs turned into relieved laughter. Jake cut the zip ties while medics rushed in. As the children were led out into fresh air, Max stayed behind a moment, nose working furiously. Then he spun and bolted toward the back exit. Headlights flared. A panel van roared to life, tires spitting gravel. Jake sprinted after his partner. "Max, go!" The shepherd launched himself across the lot in powerful bounds. The van fishtailed, but Max was faster. He leapt, jaws closing on the flapping canvas strap of the sliding door, yanking it open mid-turn. The sudden imbalance sent the vehicle into a spin, crashing sideways into a stack of pallets. Jake arrived breathless, weapon drawn. The driver stumbled out, blood on his forehead, cursing. Max stood over him, lips curled just enough to show gleaming fangs, a living line between predator and protector. Backup swarmed. Cuffs clicked. And somewhere in the distance, children's voices rose in shaky song, an old lullaby, one of them, remembered from before everything went wrong. Jake knelt, wrapped his arms around Max's neck. "You beautiful, stubborn beast," he laughed through sudden tears. Max licked his face once, then looked back toward the rescued kids, making sure every single one was accounted for. Morning found the precinct bathed in soft gold light. The children, now bathed, fed, and wrapped in clean sweatshirts, sat in the community room, clutching stuffed animals donated by officers working overtime. Sarah spotted Jake and Max first. She ran on unsteady legs and threw her arms around the shepherd's neck. "I knew you'd come," she whispered into his fur. Max stood patiently while she cried happy tears into his coat. One by one, parents arrived. Each reunion was its own small miracle, mothers collapsing to their knees, fathers trying and failing to stay composed. Cameras flashed, but no one minded. Some moments deserved to be remembered forever. A detective pulled Jake aside. "Elena Hart is talking. Says there are 2 more pickup points this week. We're dismantling the whole network because that dog wouldn't let go of a little girl's silent SOS." Jake could only nod, throat tight. Sarah's mother approached, eyes red-rimmed but shining. She knelt in front of Max and placed both hands on either side of his noble face. "Thank you doesn't feel like enough," she said, voice breaking. "But thank you." Max's tail swept the floor in slow, solemn arcs. Later, in the quiet hallway, Jake sat on the floor with Max's head in his lap. "You know what you did, right?" he murmured. "You didn't just find them. You gave them back their childhood." Max sighed a long, contented sound and closed his eyes, trusting Jake to keep watch for once. Outside, news vans gathered, reporters hungry for the hero dog angle. Jake shielded Max from the frenzy. Fame didn't interest either of them. The work did. Sarah appeared one last time holding a crayon drawing. A big black and tan dog with a shining badge, a stick-figure girl holding his paw, and a bright yellow sun overhead that read, "My hero Max." She pressed it into Jake's hand. "So I never forget how brave he is." Jake folded it carefully and tucked it inside his vest, right over his heart. "He won't forget you either, sweetheart." As Sarah walked away hand in hand with her parents, she looked back once. Max lifted his head and barked, a single clear note that carried across the parking lot like a promise kept. A week later, normalcy tried to return, but some things had permanently changed. Jake and Max walked the same concourse where it all began. Commuters still rushed, announcements still echoed. But now when people saw the German shepherd in the marked vest, they didn't just smile, they stopped. Some saluted. Some cried. Children asked to touch his fur for luck. Jake didn't mind the attention if it meant more eyes stayed open, more hearts stayed ready to listen. At the far end of Platform 9, a new plaque had been mounted. A bronze silhouette of a shepherd and the words, "In honor of Canine Max, who taught us that courage sometimes speaks in silence." Underneath, fresh flowers appeared every single day. That evening, Jake bought 2 ice cream cones, one for himself, one without the cone for Max. They sat on a bench watching trains come and go. "You know," Jake said quietly, "I always thought the job was about catching the bad guys. Turns out it's about hearing the ones who can't speak up yet." Max rested his head on Jake's knee, amber eyes calm and wise. A little boy approached shyly, holding a crumpled thank you card signed by an entire second-grade class. Jake accepted it with a grin. The boy hesitated, then reached out and hugged Max around the neck. Max endured it with dignified patience, tail thumping. When the boy ran back to his mother, Jake looked down at his partner. "You're everybody's hero now, bud. How's that feel?" Max gave a soft woof that sounded suspiciously like laughter. Later, when the sun dipped low and painted the terminal windows orange, Jake unclipped the leash, something he rarely did inside the station. Max stayed at perfect heel anyway, because some bonds don't need leather to hold them together. They walked toward the exit as a new shift of travelers poured in, unaware that safety sometimes wears fur and answers to a whistle only the heart can hear. Jake paused at the doors, hand resting on Max's head. "Ready for tomorrow?" Max looked up, eyes bright, tail wagging once, slow and certain. Because tomorrow there would be new crowds, new scents, new silent cries that only a dog with a hero's soul would ever notice. And they would be there, listening. The greatest heroes, Jake thought as they stepped into the evening light, don't always roar. Sometimes they simply refuse to look away. And that, more than any badge or any command, is what changes the world.